Hello people of California, my name is Clayton Tom, and I analyze conservative and liberal interest groups and their positions on immigration. Interest groups exist to influence government policies. An interest group is an organization of people who enter the political process to try to achieve their shared goals. They give the unrepresented an opportunity to have their voices heard. There are three types of interest groups. There's the economic interest groups, there are the cause-specific interest groups, and public interest groups. Economic interest groups are the most common, and they protect a certain economic group or interest. An example of an economic interest group is labor unions. Cause-specific interest groups, their purpose is to propose a cause, like welfare. An example of a cause-specific interest group is the NRA. Public interest groups, they are concerned with issues such as the environment, crime, and civil rights. An example of that interest group is League of Women Voters. A way that interest groups connect people to their government is through lobbying. Lobbying is how interest groups persuade political leaders to support the group's positions. Interest groups can lobby the legislative branch, Congress, or policymakers. They can take issues to court if they can't get Congress to act. They can also do grassroots lobbying, which is when members text, email, call, and start petitions to lobby legislators. There is also protest and radical activism. Political action committees, or super PACs, are officially registered fundraising organizations that represent interest groups in the political process. Source 1. I had the opportunity to analyze the AFL-CIO's article, Executive Action to Protect Worker Rights. I also analyzed their point of view and arguments over the treatment of immigrant workers. The AFL-CIO believe that immigrant workers suffer the most wage theft, sexual harassment, and death and injury on the job. This is because immigrant workers are afraid to form unions or request better working conditions due to the threat of deportation. They also state that this does not only affect immigrant workers, but the whole working force and economy, since employers can drive down wages. The political ideology of the source is modern American liberalism. I believe this because they're supporting social justice. Wikipedia says that modern American liberalism aims at the preservation and extension of human, social, civil rights, as well as the government's guaranteed provision of positive rights. The AFL-CIO's point of view on immigrant workers is that the government needs to enact an employment-based visa system. This source is biased because it doesn't provide any opposing viewpoints. The only evidence provided by the article is that the Congressional Budget Office projected that reforms would net more than $450 million in new revenues and reduce deficit by nearly $200 million over the next 10 years. Source 2. I had the opportunity to analyze the Federation for American Immigration Reforms, or FAIR's, school report. It was featured on the Fox News, and it showed their views on illegal immigrant child students. The title of the article is Summer Border Surge of Illegal Aliens Will Cost Local School Districts Millions. The political ideology of the source is modern American liberalism. I believe this because they're supporting social justice. The video starts discussing the issue in general. It says that with an influx of 37,000 illegal immigrant students, FAIR predicts the cost will be $761 million for this school year. Out of that, state and local governments will have to pay 90%. Then the video goes into a debate between two people, David Weber, who is against immigration reform, and Leslie Marshall, who is for it. David Weber says that these immigrant children, will end up in poor school districts and already stressed neighborhoods. He directly addresses the audience by saying that the money comes from taxes, and if you own homes or if you own condos, you will be paying for it. He states other places that this money could go, like to veterans. Leslie Marshall, on the other hand, tends to focus on the children and appeals to emotion. She says that they're just children, and she mentions the long periods of time that these children are detained. She also mentions that 6 of the children who were previously deported to Honduras were murdered. But then she brings up a good point and says that there is a cost to deport and detain these immigrants, and there also is a cost to educate these immigrants. It's just where we put the money. Source 3. I had the opportunity to analyze the National Council of Raza, the NCLR, and their point of view and arguments over immigration. In this video, or this source, the president of the NCLR, Janet M., is talking about future immigration reform. She starts out praising people in support of the immigration reform, and then moves on to her disapproval of those who protest immigrants. In this video, she talks mostly about child immigrants, and then she portrays the Republicans as bad guys. The political ideology of the source is modern American liberalism. I believe this because they are supporting social justice. The NRLA's point of view on immigration reform is that it needs to happen as soon as possible, but progress is being hindered by Republican extremists. The majority of her speech is attacking this side. Very little research is quoted. The speech includes many logical fallacies, including appeal to emotion, hasty generalization, and red herring and ad hominem. Hasty generalization is shown where she generalizes her whole opposition with protesters that were carrying semi-automatic rifles. Red herring and ad hominem are shown in her portrayal of the opposing side. She calls them the worsened people. She calls them un-American, a mob taking the law into its own hands. She describes them as ugly, divisive, angry, reprehensible. She calls them hateful bigots. She says they're willfully neglectful. She says they are low she couldn't believe could get much lower. She says that they were cloaking their hatred in patriotism. She says they were deliberately frightening already traumatized kids. She says they were preventing authorities from doing their job, and she says she was sickened by that. On the other hand, when addressing kids, she really appeals to emotion. She just says they're little kids simply seeking refuge, and she says it in a very high voice. She describes the plight of these kids, and she just says they're a group of young children in need. She says they're still in diapers. She doesn't really address the issue at all, or any solution.